Welcome to Audio Ideas. Today we're going to check the SplitEQ plugin by Eventide, and we are trying to replicate the functionality with free plugins. This plugin splits incoming audio into transient and tonal parts, and then you can EQ and pan them separately. Let's take a look. I'm boosting the transients and cutting the tonal parts around 120 Hz. This will bring out the kick and snare and cut the bass. We can invert the EQ with the EQ scale control. We can also do a left-right panning of the transient and tonal parts around this frequency. And the same for mid-side. We can also solo just the transients or the tonal parts. We can also change the way how the signal is split into the transient and tonal parts. The separation control sets the amount of crosstalk between the parts. When set to 100, there is no crosstalk. The smooth control works like an attack control for the transients. The decay control works like a release. You can use the source control to change the way the algorithm reacts to transients. We will start by adding a Transient Designer plugin. We will use that to split the incoming audio into transient and tonal parts. I will use a free kHz plugin, but you can pretty much use any Transient Designer plugin you wish. But this actually sounds pretty good. The way we're going to split the signal is pretty simple. If you have a Transient Designer plugin and you pull down the attack control, you're left with the tonal signal. And if you take the difference signal between the original incoming signal and the tonal signal, then you are left with the transient signal. I'm using Reaper for this example because Reaper has this delta solo functionality that gives you the difference signal within the plugin. Just alt-click the wet dry knob. Let's press play and we should hear nothing. Let's bring the attack all the way down. Because we are in the delta solo mode, this will give us just the transients. There are two extra controls in this plugin that I'm not completely sure what they do, even though there is a description below. But I think the pump control works like a hold control in a gate. It gives more weight to the transient. The speed control seems to work like a release control in a gate, so I'm shortening the tail of the transient by increasing this parameter. Sounds good. Now I'll flip between the normal and delta solo mode to hear the transient and tonal parts. I want to aim to settings where there's equal amount of energy in the transient and the tonal parts. Now let's duplicate this plugin. The first plugin in the chain will do the tonal parts. We will route this plugin outputs to track channels 5 and 6. You can also use the channels 3 and 4. But if you happen to own FabFilter Pro Q EQ plugin, this will give you some really nice extra functionality. The second plugin will do the transient parts. We will leave this to the channels 1 and 2, but we will turn on the delta solo mode. Now we see that the transient part is in channels 1 and 2 and the tonal part is in channels 5 and 6. Next thing we need to do is flip the polarity of the transients because the delta solo mode flips the polarity of the original signal. Let's use a Reaper stock plugin for this. We will leave it to channels 1 and 2 and then flip both channels. Now we're gonna mix the channels back together. We will again use a Reaper stock plugin for this. Let's mix the stereo pairs 1 and 2 and 5 and 6 to outputs 1 and 2. Now we should have the original signal again. Let's hear it. To confirm this, let's copy the original audio to second track, reverse the polarity, and do a null test. Seems to work. And mute the track to confirm. That's the hard part done, and now the fun begins. If you insert any plugin before the last mixer plugin and route it to channels 1 and 2, then it'll only affect the transients. If you route it to tracks 5 and 6, it'll affect the tonal part. We will insert 2 ReEQ plugins and route them accordingly. Remember to put them before the mixer plugin. Now we can equalize the transients with the left EQ. And the tonal parts with the right EQ. Now you can equalize the transient and tonal parts with 3 plugins, but let's continue into more interesting stuff. If you add FabFilter Pro Q on a channel that has 6 channels, it thinks that it's a 5.1 surround channel. If you add a band and don't touch the speaker controls, then it acts like a normal EQ band. But if you choose the front, left and right, you can EQ the transients. But if you choose the surround left and right, then you can EQ the tonal part. Now you can do all the normal Pro Q tricks, such as take 2 bands and mirror them around the unity gain. You can boost the kick and remove the bass, or vice versa. Now that you've done this once, it's a good idea to save this as FX chain. Choose Save All FX as chain and give it a name. Now you can easily reuse this chain on a new track. The usage is not limited to equalizing. You can, for example, add reverb to transients. Or the tonal part. For comparison baseline, I gave 10 dB boost to 5K just to hear how these EQs sound like. That's close enough for this purpose. Now let's hear how it sounds when we boost just the transients. The Eventide plugin will detect smaller transients in the high frequencies, so the boost will sound louder. Let's try 6 dB boost in the Eventide plugin. Let me know in the comments which one you like better. Also let me know if you want to see more generalized version for different DAWs. or perhaps a version where we use the original analog SPL transient designer. See you in the next video. Bye now.